Hi, welcome to Marc Explains. Welcome to this next session in this event sourcing series, a practical introduction on multiple levels. Today, level 2. And level 2 is about domain-driven design, a ubiquitous language, and event modeling. Although it is about event modeling, let's first have a look at modeling itself. More especially, object modeling. The object modeling of domain-driven design is sort of simplified UML with some extras. Let's start with the value object. The most simplest object, just something with a value. So a field with a name and some value in it. There are special value objects because they represent an identity. So an identity is just a value object, but because of the meaning of it, what they represent, it's sort of a different value object. And it is the identity of what? Well, a class, an entity. So an identity is always encapsulated in an entity. And then the entity or a collection of entities can be part of a group in which they exist. And if this sort of main object or main entity or root entity, all the other entities and value objects don't exist or have no reason to exist. And this is called the aggregate root. So the aggregate root is the base or the root of this whole collection of entities and value objects. When you reference to something inside an aggregate root, you always need to reference the aggregate root and the entity itself. So if you reference another entity, always reference the aggregate root, the identity of the aggregate root as well. Two aggregate roots can be managed and maintained within one system. This will create a bounded context, a context in which they are bound together. Of course, there are different reasons for bounding aggregates. A system limits or a system bound is a common one. It is also possible that two aggregates are managed in two different systems. Then they have a separate bounded context, and you can still reference to the other aggregate or an entity within that aggregate referencing the aggregate as well, but they have their own bounded context. So this is the object modeling of event sourcing or of domain-driven design. What about event modeling then? Well, let's get back to the pattern of event sourcing where you have commands and events and queries or projections or views. So first we have the command. Generally this is modeled as a blue box. Then the command should, when it's successful at least, produce an event or at least one event. An event is an orange box, an orange square. And then events populate a view or populate a projection or a query store. So this is the general way of modeling events and commands and views. You can find out more on eventmodeling.org. And events are very rich and flexible. When you have a system which handles one command producing one event and populating a view, at least one, then you can extend your features or you can enrich your system by adding new events. Maybe another command is producing a different event, or the same command is producing new events. And once you have set up your system with your first command, event, and view, incrementing features, so incrementing your richness of your application, of your system, is just more of the same. It's the same handling of commands, producing events, populating views. So instead of a growing complexity, the complexity stays sort of the same. and it's very clear what is added and what should be added. Of course, over time, the events already in your system might evolve as well. Well, this is very good maintainable by the versioning of events. So each event has a version, and once they are produced, you can't change them. They are immutable. They are created once, and that's how they were created at that point in time. So over time, this event might be extended by an attribute or something. Then in one point in time, when the new version of the application is deployed, new versions of the same events will be produced, including this extra attribute. The previous produced events won't have this attribute and won't be changed. So you need to upcast them and handle that in a correct way. But at least it's for the maintainability of your system, it's very well possible to maintain events and increase your application with new functionality. So let's combine the object modeling of domain-driven design and the event modeling. Because where is the aggregate in this? Well, actually, it is the horizontal line. So a command is sent to a command handling functionality in your application, and this checks if the aggregate is in a state that this command can be handled. And if so, the aggregate root is producing events for itself or any entity and value object in its group, in its hierarchy. So events are always generated or produced based on this aggregate. And actually, how does this work? Well, the command is sent to the command handler of this aggregate. Events are being produced and are internally populating a view to check the internal state of the aggregate. And this view is used by handling new commands. And of course, once you have these events, you can populate multiple other views with probably something similar than the internal aggregate view, but can be whole different views as well. So this is event modeling in combination with the object modeling. And now we are on a quest to find out about our events. How do we find our events? Well, there's a very nice process for that, because we want to have a brainstorm on events, and that's exactly what event storming is. Alberto has a very rich documentation and introduction on event storming at eventstorming.com, so please check that out and see how he introduces event storming. And the idea is that you have a brainstorm or event storm on your whole system, or maybe in parts, in partitions, where you are looking for, okay, what's the read model? What is the action of a user then? What should be the command? What should the system do? And which events are being produced? And going through this step by step might give you a nice line from start to end on steps, actions, commands, and events that are being produced, and all the views you need. So this is event storming. Please check it out for more information. And with that, we are at the end of this session about event modeling, especially, or mainly, talking about domain-driven design and a ubiquitous language, because the language is pointing out the different events and the commands we have. I also touched a little bit on event storming, and I hope it will help you out. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next session.